to today's interview. Today I have Amber Lassiter. Amber Lassiter has a Master's of Arts in Teaching and Education and a Master's of Arts in Reading. She is certified as an elementary teacher and reading specialist. Amber has been recognized for her leadership skills in helping to transform underperforming schools while increasing the graduation and student retention rates of college students. She has served as a classroom teacher and reading specialist for over 13 years. She has also worked as an adjunct instructor teaching developmental reading courses, English as a second language courses, served as the director of the Center for Academic Success at Berkeley College, and facilitated workshops at several conferences addressing topics such as strategies to simplify the complexities of biology and conquering test-taking anxiety. She is a member of the National Teacher Sorority Pi Delta Kappa Incorporated and is obtaining an educational specialist degree from Seton Hall University. Welcome, Amber Lassiter.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's glad to be able to talk to you this evening. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about your book. I know that you're in the education world, and you do a lot of things with young children. You have a great book here, by the way. It's called What's Your Favorite Color? If you could show me that.
Yeah.
And that is a great looking cover right there. So I love the cover. I love the story. I've read your book, and I let my kids read it as well too, and they thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
And so who did you work with to actually create the cover there and the artwork within your book?
So the artwork was done by a company called Flat World Solutions. They were awesome. As a matter of fact, when I was actually done with the manuscript, finding an illustrator is not an easy process by no means. After doing a lot of Google searches, I found the organization, Flat World, and they were phenomenal. I sent them my manuscript. They've never even seen a picture of me. And believe it or not, this little girl is me.
Oh.
Nice job, right?
That's awesome, yeah.
So I just sent them the manuscript, and they actually captured the pictures very, very, very well. I'll even share with you one of my favorite pictures real quick.
Okay.
So
they basically took your manuscript and they just went from right there and just said, here's my interpretation of everything that we read.
Yeah.
Oh.
So this is actually my favorite page because the woman back here represents my mother. And this is exactly how my mom used to dress when she was a teacher. And they didn't know that. So
they captured her essence very beautifully.
Yes, thank you.
That's amazing. That is absolutely awesome whenever you can take an idea like that, present it, and then somebody can absolutely just interpret it perfectly. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. They were awesome. And then I also had an editor because I did do self-publishing. So this was a new journey for me. I knew nothing about writing, knew nothing about the publishing world. So a lot of trial and error, but I was glad that I was able to connect with an editor. She was phenomenal. All I can say is when you have your manuscript and you give it to someone, just be prepared for their feedback because the feedback I received, I thought it was like perfect at that moment. But the feedback that she gave was like, wow, this thing is really lit up with all the little revision marks. But it was so great because she knew my vision. She knew what I wanted to do. And so a lot of the feedback that she gave me, those driving questions, helped me to go back and really focus back on what it was that I was trying to do to make sure I stayed on course. So if you can get an editor as well, I highly recommend it.
Absolutely. And that feedback is absolutely awesome because what that is that's an outside perspective. Because I know I've written a few books myself, and a lot of times I get so tunnel vision within what it is that I'm writing that I don't see spelling mistakes. I don't see, does this sentence make sense? A lot of times I don't see those types of things. So having that outside perspective, looking at your book, making modifications, making updates or recommendations from that perspective is awesome. So that was a pretty wonderful process for you then.
Yeah, it really, really was. And so just a little bit how I even got the book started was, as you shared, I'm already a teacher, you know this. I've taught reading forever. And what I started noticing was at my school, every year we would give a reading assessment. The reading assessment was two-folded. You would assess to make sure that the students are able to decode and read the words, but there's also that comprehension aspect. So we tend to ask two types of questions. We ask those literal questions. They're right there in the text, right? And then there's those inferencing questions. And I was noticing that the students would struggle with inferencing. And so after reviewing my data, that really sparked the idea to me of writing the book, What's Your Favorite Color? Because I wanted to strengthen the students' reading comprehension skills in that arena.
You know, that's absolutely interesting, because I know I've got two young children myself, and my younger daughter, for example, I'll give you a good example here. When she was younger, she knew how to say a lot of the words because she either seen them or heard us say something. So how do you, how do you actually teach a young child that right there, who can mimic words, but once again has trouble saying some of those other words that they might not have either heard or seen before?
So it's two-folded. If the child is having trouble reading the word, pronouncing it, then that's from a phonics aspect, and I tend to teach them strategies of how to break down that word, break it into syllables. So that'll be the first step of it. Now, what happens with most of our struggling readers is that they're like, oh, I can say the word, I can say that word, and they think that they're reading. They are, but to a degree. There's that comprehension aspect of it. And so then you have to kind of go back and get them to understand what the author's really trying to say, what this word means in this context. Why are they choosing to use this language? And that's a whole nother process. So there's a wealth of strategies that's out there that exist. But for me, I like to choose my strategies once I get to know the students that I'm working with. So I'm going to be very strategic as I'm supporting them through that process.
Okay. So, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit, go a little bit more in depth about your book, the story of your book. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Okay. So as I just shared, the book was actually birthed out of noticing some struggles of my students. Mm-hmm. And so it was Christmas break. How teachers are out for the winter time, and we think we're really off from work, but we're really not. We're still working. And I call myself the nerdy teacher because I was still, during Christmas break, analyzing my students' data. Like, what are they getting? What are they struggling with? And how am I going to proceed when I come back in January? And again, I started noticing what I shared with you. When it comes to that comprehension, those inferences, they're just not making the connection. Wow. And so it was during Christmas break. I'm a Christian, and I believe that the Lord just started speaking to me and giving me words. And I just took out my laptop and just started typing this very simple storyline. But the caveat to it is, how do we get the students to comprehend so they're not just these word callers? And as teachers, we model these think alouds, we model the read alouds, and then we give the students the book, and we're hoping that they're going to transfer this knowledge. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. What happens when you're not there to be that safety net? Mm-hmm. And so what I've done with this particular book is I have embedded comprehension questions strategically throughout the story that's going to help the students to be what we call active readers. We don't want them to be passive where they're just reading the words. Right. As well as these comprehension questions are going to touch upon inferencing. It's going to get them to go back and really think critically about what they're reading, and even find textual evidence. That's a huge skill if you look at our standards across the board. And so that's something that I wanted to do. When I go to Barnes and Nobles and I see the books there, I see a lot of parents reading with their children. Some ask comprehension questions and some do not. And it's been my experience that sometimes parents are like, I don't know what to ask my child. Well, I took the guessing work right out of it for you, and I've already went ahead and embedded in there.
So what are some key questions? So when a child reads your book, I know throughout there you got some active questions that are in there. What are some really good questions that you would ask a child, or at least present, in order to get them to understand the material or what the point that you're trying to make?
That really depends on the portion of the text that maybe they have read. But no matter what question you may choose to ask them, you always want to ask a follow-up question of, how do you know? Wow. When you ask them that, how do you know, that forces them to really sit back and think, how did I get this information? Where did I get it from? So they're taking some of their prior knowledge to add to it, and they're going back into the text to extract it, to make those connections as well.
I think one of the key questions, I know that I have both of my children read books every single day. They read for about 20 or 30 minutes. And one of the big things that we focus on is the main idea. It's the main idea of what you just read, because a lot of times, children can read something and they might not necessarily be able to depict what the main idea is. Mm-hmm. Right? So within your story, what is the main idea?
So what I would say is to support children who are struggling with the main idea, I believe in self-questioning. And we want to give the students those tools and those powers. So when it comes to that particular skill, main idea, I strategically stop and have my students ask themselves, what is the author trying to tell me? What is the author trying to say? Right? So let's just use a nonfiction story. Let's just say the story was about sharks, and you ask the child, what was it about? They're going to say sharks. Well, let's beat them to the punch, right? Let's be a little bit more strategic about it. So your question might be, what does the author want you to know about sharks?
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that's going to push them a little bit further where they're not giving these one-worded answers, but they're diving in a little bit deeper. Within the confines of my book, another skill I saw that students were struggling with was analyzing characters. Getting to understand how characters change over time and what causes those changes. So my question is based on analyzing the character behaviors, as well as being able to understand why a character is feeling how they're feeling. So let me see if I can find a question for you.
It's really interesting that you point out characters and writing characters, because I know that a lot of authors out there really struggle with getting to the meat and potatoes of their character. But in a book like this right here, the main character in the book is you, right?
Yeah, I'm the main character. Yes.
So who knows yourself better than yourself? So being able to project yourself into a story like that, you really didn't have to dig too far, too deep in order to come up with your character, the isms of your character, and basically using your knowledge and skills in order to bridge that gap with between your character, your story, and those who read your story.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because once upon a time, I was a child too. And I was also a struggling reader. And I struggled all through high school. So I really can relate to a lot of the stumbling blocks that my students are facing. So the name of the story, as we know, is called What's Your Favorite Color? I'll give you a little background on it. So Amber and her classmates were told to come to school and wear one article of clothing that matches their favorite color, but they had to keep it a secret. When they came to school, they were going to paint a picture, and they had to paint one item in the picture that represented their favorite color. Well, Amber forgot her watercolors.
No.
Classic Amber, she's forgetful, right? And so she had no choice but to begin to borrow from her classmates. But meanwhile, she has to keep it a secret. And every time she borrows a color paint from one of her classmates, they make the assumption that that's her favorite color. And through Amber's gestures and body language, she's actually answering them. But if the readers have to really pick up on that. And after she has an encounter with every classmate, I'm posing those comprehension questions there. So after she leaves the first classmate, one of the questions that I ask is, why did Michelle think Amber's favorite color was red?
Okay.
Do you think Michelle believed Amber? How do you know? Why did Amber's brows knit into a frown? So again, it presents that conversation and dialogue with the reader, whether it's parent and child, teacher and child, mentor and child, or just a group of readers that are together, but it's really getting them to sit back and think critically about what's happening in that portion of the text.
That's a great point right there. Critical thinking is a skill that we definitely, as parents, as teachers, as mentors, need to get across to young kids, because at a young age, children's minds are very impressionable. Okay. And if we can set that tone of critical thinking at an early age, we can give the children an opportunity or the necessary skills in order to think on their own. It's kind of like the adage of, you give a person a fish, you know what I'm saying? But yet if you teach them how to fish, I love that story right there, because I believe that your book is giving the necessary skills, those critical skills, to have young children think on their own. What are your thoughts on that right there?
Yes, it is crucial. And I think that was, like I said, the main purpose behind it. Additionally, to go back into that critical thinking aspect, in the book, I've also have what I call paperclip pages. And it's just an opportunity after the questions are being posed for the reader to use their learning style. They can illustrate their thinking or bullet point their notes, just trying to bring in those 21st century skills as well. So yes, When we can strengthen their critical thinking skills, then they will get a deeper understanding of what it is that they're reading.
Mm. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned learning style, because there's definitely different types of learning styles that children, even adults, can learn. I know that myself, I am more. Well, I mean, it depends on the content, whether I learn visually, whether I learn auditory, reading, or whatever the case may be. What what is your favorite way to learn?
I am visual and kinesthetic. So I'm the animated teacher.
Mm,
I'm the one that's always bouncing around from the moment I get there to the moment that I leave. And I always, every year, every school year, I always do some type of learning assessment, learning styles assessment with my students, because research says that we tend to teach according to our learning style. So knowing that I'm visual and kinesthetic, it's not going to do me any good if I'm using those strategies and I have auditory learners in front of me. I'm going to lose them, right?
right.
And so I like to do that as an assessment to know who I'm teaching, and so how I can tweak my style to fit the needs of my students.
Yeah, that's very beneficial, doing that at the first of the year, so you get to know a little bit about your students, know how they learn, and then you can know how to present information. So have you ever had a student that you just, at the beginning of the year, you did their assessment, you thought you knew exactly how they were, but ever ran across some content that they just wasn't getting regardless of their learning style? And how did you overcome that?
Yes, had quite a bit. Little to talk about. When I can't get across through their learning style, I find out what their interests are.
Oh, okay.
And so this one particular year, I had a student that all he wanted to do was read video games. He just wanted to play video games and learn all about that. Well, guess what? I got the little video game inserts and I brought them out, and I used those to help him with the reading process. Because a lot of times I think that we confine reading to just a book, and we're engaged in the reading process on a daily basis, reinforcing those skills. You're watching TV, you're making those inferences, you're making those predictions, you're drawing those conclusions. We use them in already different ways. So with this one particular student, I was able to motivate him because we were reading things across his interests. I was still meeting my goals and objectives. I just gave him something that he was motivated by. Another student was interested in President Barack Obama at the time. So I went to Barnes and Noble and bought every book. And every lunch period, it was he and I, and we were reading those books.
Yeah.
Another student wanted to be a model. We must have read everything we could find on Tyra Banks that one particular year. But again, it's finding that carrot.
Yeah.
And motivating them. And a lot of times, it's once you build the rapport with them, the relationship, that bond,
Mm-hmm.
then their confidence moves up. And I always say 50% of teaching somebody how to read is getting their confidence. You can get their confidence and their trust, everything else is smooth sailing.
Absolutely.
So that's the approach I tend to use.
100%, absolutely agreed. If you motivate someone to read, or motivate them or inspire to take that appropriate action, you could try to put that square peg in that circle all that you want. If that student is not motivated, or that child is not motivated, they're not going to learn.
Right.
I've definitely discovered that, and that tactic right there, that was absolutely amazing right there. I love that tactic, using motivators in order to inspire them to do what you're trying to get. And they don't know that they're learning.
No.
They're just having fun.
Yes.
Fun. But you're learning. But
Yes.
you're reading. But yet you're doing. And the key point about that, I think, is highlighting that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Look what you just learned. Reward.
Yes.
So how important do you think are rewards in reference to children learning and reading?
I think it's huge. And I think rewards takes on a different fold. I think sometimes we think rewards has to be always something that's tangible. And sometimes it doesn't have to be. So it varies from person to person. Right. But I like to really work on that intrinsic motivation, because that's what's going to stay with you over the realm of your life.
Would you agree that you can condition a child the wrong way based off of the reward?
You could.
Okay.
I think you can. I think you can have it.
And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen to where, okay, well, I did this thing. Where's my reward? I'm not going to get a reward this time. You were supposed to read for 20 minutes, not get a reward for 20 minutes.
You know how I used to use that in my classroom? So my early years as a teacher, you're trying to find out that management behavior system process. And a lot of my colleagues was like, oh, just do the treasure box. I was not a treasure box person, but every September I would try to commit to it. And I just said, I just can't do it. I'm tired of buying these prizes. I want them to be motivated. Mm-hmm. So what I would do is the first couple of days of school, I didn't do it. So that first week of school, the first full week, my favorite word was, we're going to play the might game, M-I-G-H-T, might. And I explained to them what the word might meant. And what would happen is, if you're doing this, you might earn treasure box. You might earn whatever the case may be. And so as they were doing these things, they would get those little benefits and those rewards. But as my way of weaning them off of it, I would always buy 2 great big prizes and keep them hidden in the classroom. And I waited for the day where most of the class did not do what they needed to do. Maybe there was like 1 or 2 students who did. And guess what? That was the day I would bring out those huge prizes. And I was like, oh, I said, you never know. You might get something. And then I'm like, so then the next day, everybody's on point and they'll say, well, are we going to get something? I said, no, you might. You never know when you may. You never know when you may not. And as the school year went on, it just, the whole might thing just went away. They weren't looking for prizes anymore. But that was my way of trying to get them away from always expecting something tangible. Right. On Fridays for treasure box because you read for 20 minutes.
That's a great story. Absolutely. That's an awesome story. I'm going to have to try that one. I'm definitely going to put that one in my toolkit and use that one. Who are your influences for writing your book?
Wow. Believe it, my mom. My mom was my influencer. My mother was a writer. Unfortunately, she passed away. And we didn't get a chance to formally publish her works. But I mean, I can't recall a moment where she was not writing. Writing was not my strength. My dad was a great writer. My siblings, writing did not fall on me. I struggled with that as well. And so even though it was an area of weakness for me, I did have some great teachers that were able to help me identify some of my strengths as a writer and help me to hone in on that. So I would definitely say my mother has been very influential in my process.
That I know moms can definitely be huge within our lives. I know my mother is huge within my life. She has definitely been a huge mentor to me, a huge educator. She allowed me the freedom to do what I do over the years. So as an educator, what are some of the struggles that you see young students making today, and how would your book bridge that gap?
So in the area of reading, I think we kind of touched upon it. It's along the lines of getting them to break down those words. And then the next step is, after they broke down the words, understanding really what those key points are, those key ideas are in the text. What I find to be the struggle for most of the students is that they're just reading the words. And they're not even aware that, I was supposed to comprehend this? Because after they read and you ask them the questions, they're looking at you like, you mean I gotta go back into the text? It's like, yes, you gotta go back into the text. Yeah. And that was something else that I noticed, where they would be asked these questions at the end, and they would have this book, and they're not even sure where to go. So let's just say you're asking them something that happened in the middle of the story. They're looking back from the beginning of the book, trying to locate that information. So based upon my observations from working with students over the years, that's really where my book evolved from as well. Just some of those key hiccups that I'm noticing, just trying to take some of that struggle out of it for our students. So I believe that my book is going to support them with, as I said, being active readers. It's going to also help them with going back into the text to locate information, to think critically, and to actually pay attention to characters. The way we analyze characters, I always tell the students, is something this simple. I say, let's pretend, and I always say, let's pretend. I said that for lunch today, you're not going to eat in the cafeteria. I'm going to buy you lunch. What would you like? And I'll name like 3 places. And then they'll tell me what they want. And I said, okay. I'm going to go get it today. I said, we're pretending. I said, but lunchtime comes and you're looking for me, but I never come. And then you see me, you say, well, what happened? And I'll say, oh, I forgot. I'll bring it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, never bring it. I say, oh, I forgot. I'll bring it on Thursday. And then Thursday comes and I don't bring it. I said, on Friday, are you going to believe me? They're like, no. I said, well, why not? Because you said you were going to do it and you didn't do it. I said, look, that's how we analyze characters. You pay attention to what they're saying and what they are doing. Same thing in what we're reading. So they have the skills, is being able to help them to connect it when they're reading the words. And that's what my book is going to be doing.
That is an absolutely great point.
Thank you.
So what other projects do you have going on? Do you have any current or do you have any future projects that you're working on?
Yes, I'm pretty busy right now. I'm being highly encouraged to start writing my next book. So I'm thinking about making Little Amber a series. So that's going to be something I'm hoping to move forward with in the future. But right now, I'm also promoting through some book signings. So I have some book signings that will be coming up in the fall, very, very soon. One in the summer and one in the fall. And I'm also going around and I'm visiting local schools. So I'm getting the opportunity to actually go in and read the book and do some activities with students around analyzing the characters. It's pretty cool. One classroom, I got an opportunity to make a character report card. And so, again, about analyzing characters, we made an actual report card and we identified some character traits. And as we were reading, we had to give Amber a grade based upon that character trait. And then as the evidence, we had to justify using the text. Why did we give Amber that grade? And it turned out to be such a great project. So I'm looking to continue to do more work around that, supporting teachers and students in the schools as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely a great opportunity right there to be able to have influence and impact on young children's lives right there.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
to have such a great story and a good message within your book right there, I strongly believe that you're going to have that influence and you're going to have that strong impact on those young minds and lives.
Thank you.
All right, so if there is any one golden nugget or any words of advice that you could give a young author or even a seasoned author, what would that advice be? What would that golden nugget be?
Hmm. You know, it's so interesting because now that I have written my book, people are saying, "You're an author." And I'm like, "No, I'm not, but I guess I am." And so I've been sharing my process with everyone, and they're like, I have a book in me. I've been wanting to do it. And I'm just going to say, just keep moving forward. Just get your whatever your writing process is, just begin. I had another colleague say to me, I could just write about my whole life. I said, well, then you need to start journaling every day because there's always something interesting going on with her. So that would be one of my big nuggets to people is just start writing. Don't be afraid to get an editor and find someone who could just give you feedback. I made my family sit down and listen to me many a night just to make sure that it made sense, it was on point. I even used my students as my piloting group because as I was writing my book and I wanted to make sure that my ideas were clear and clear enough for children, I would actually read to them in class, but they didn't know it was my book at the time because you get different feelings. But I would say find a group that's going to be honest with you to give you some honest feedback, I think would be vital.
And children are definitely the most honest group because they are
Yes.
here when it comes to saying something's wrong or pointing it out.
Yes. It's so true.
Kind of interesting. I know both of my kids, they're fearless when it comes to that because, as children, even as adults, everything throughout life, is learned. We learn how to walk, we learn how to talk, we learn how to believe, we learn how to, we learn how to do all these things. Everything is learned. We didn't just thrive in this world and we know everything.
Right.
And I know myself, I'm still learning every single day. And Amber, I want to thank you very much. I learned a tremendous amount from you today, and from one educator to another, because I'm also in the world of training development within my day job. I'm teaching people. Basically, I'm teaching instructors how to instruct. So it's kind of interesting to be able to talk to a fellow educator over some things. I definitively enjoyed this interview. I enjoyed learning from you. I know the few times that we've talked, you've always had some great knowledge, great experience, great feedback, and I'm truly blessed and truly thankful to know you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've enjoyed spending this time with you as well.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you would like to visit more from Amber Lassiter, you can do so by visiting her website, amberlassiter.com. There you can find her book, What's Your Favorite Color? You can read more from her in her blog posts, and you can see some of the other events that she has going on. I believe you've had a radio show as well, too. You were on a talk show as well, too, right?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
You see that there, and her social media. So connect with more from Amber over at her website, amberlassiter.com, and we'll see you in the next video.